Good morning to everybody. We are starting our webinar. My name is Andrius Kubilius. I am a member of European Parliament from Lithuania, from former Prime Minister, and also I am co-chair of Euronest Parliamentary Assembly delegation from European Parliament. And you know that Euronest is Parliamentary Assembly which is taking care about all the Eastern Partnership. Today we're having a joint event organized by our informal EU Neighbourhood East Forum with CEPS. CEPS is very well-known think tank here in Brussels, and I am very happy that we shall try to lead this seminar together with Michael Emerson from CEPS. As you know and as you see from the title of the seminar, really title is very clear. Balkan and East European comparisons and building a new momentum for the European integration, experience of Balkan and Eastern European associated states. And I think that really what we shall try to discuss is really a very important issue. Important issue because CEPS prepared very important and very valuable report, which you can read, you can look into it. And the report was prepared because what CEPS started to do back in 2018, trying to compare Eastern Partnership countries with Western Balkans, for me, for those who are looking from European Parliament towards Eastern Partnership countries, it looked like a very important job. So now really we have a special report. And it both answers a lot of questions which we were discussing earlier, and also puts a lot of new ideas about how things can develop with EU neighborhood, including Eastern Partnership countries, but also Western Balkan countries. I will try very briefly to say what is important from my point of view in that report. Then I will give the floor to Michael Emerson. Then we shall start all the discussion. It's possible to put questions, on Q&A or chat. But since we have quite many speakers, I'm not so convinced that we shall have enough of time for really broader discussion after all the speakers will speak. But I will try to stress several moments. Really, when we are looking into Eastern Partnership countries, especially into so-called trio most advanced who have association agreements, for me always it was in some way not very clear why we have in some way different approach from EU side towards Eastern Partnership countries, those trio countries and Western Balkans. And we know what is the difference. Western Balkans have membership perspective. For trio countries, that is not available. Those countries are trying all the time to get some kind of more clear message from EU side. The message is not coming. Again, there are different reasons why. But that makes, that always made me, worry about how to keep motivation for reforms inside of those trio countries if they are not getting some kind of much more clear perspective, where they can hit and what's at the end of the road. So that was why always we were raising that question: what is the difference in between of Western Balkan countries and Eastern Partnership countries? And the report really, with very precise data, very precise numbers, brings very clear answer. That despite differences from EU side, different approaches to those two regions are very similar in their development. In their development on the path of integration, their development of making reforms, And if you will look into the concluding data, you will see that really those trio countries of Eastern Partnership region, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, are very similar in their numbers with leading Western Balkan countries. Georgia is among the leaders of all the countries of Western Balkans and Eastern Partnership countries. Ukraine and Moldova are a little bit behind, but not very far away. And that's really that is good message, first of all, for those trio associated countries. That really they were doing good job. They were catching up with the association agreements, with the free trade agreements, which really were very ambitious ones, and the outcome is here. For Western Balkans, it's also perhaps an important message that they need to wake up. In some cases, there are those frontrunners in Western Balkans like Montenegro or North Macedonia and Serbia, but that is what Michael perhaps will explain much better. I am not feeling myself big expert on Western Balkans, but that is a message that those from Eastern Partnership region are catching up, and that brings then several more, I would say, more geopolitical questions. If Eastern Partnership trio countries are so close to Western Balkan countries, then there is a question why, from EU side, we should try to keep different policy approaches to those two different regions. Second, of course, despite the fact that Western Balkans have, membership perspective and Eastern Partnership trio do not have, but what this report is saying that it's not very clear if Western Balkans really will get up to full membership if EU will not be able to make reforms of decision making, and institutions, which is an obstacle for further enlargement. So, and what's really important, the report proposes clear path to some kind of intermediate status, which I think that for Eastern Partnership countries really can be a new path, new doors, which could create for them very clear practical perspective. And that intermediate status before full membership, it can bring almost majority of the benefits of full membership, like presence in single market, like access to EU funds and to supervision of acquis communautaire, but only partial or progressive participation in EU institutions. At least myself, I call this intermediate status as anti-chamber membership, which can be described in a very clear way, which can be really attractive, going forward and having very clear understanding how to reach that intermediate status. And that is, something what Romano Prodi was speaking back, I don't know even how many years ago, at the beginning of 20s, when he was speaking about everything but institutions as a possibility for enlargement. That is very similar to what last year European Parliament report on Eastern Partnership future was speaking about integration towards single market. And that is what I saw, what Elmar Brok, famous former AFET chairman, is speaking even now in his recent article in Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. So that is I conclude here that really I would like to thank CEPS for really very inspiring intellectual discussion, and some kind of geopolitical thinking back to Eastern Partnership discussion. And that is what I think that it will be discussed very deeply in forthcoming Euronest plenary sessions, in different groups, in different different seminars, and I hope that it will have an impact also on EU thinking before, EU institution thinking before Eastern Partnership Summit, which will be held later this year. So thanks a lot again to CEPS, and now I am very happy to introduce Michael Emerson, who was leading all the preparation of this report, and who we know for his permanent, inspiring intellectual job. And his article from 2018 was an inspiration for us to look for possibility to have this much broader report. So Michael, floor is yours. Michael, unmute yourself. Michael, unmute yourself.
Right, is that better now?
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm very happy, Andreas, to accept your invitation, together with the co-authors of this quite long paper, who I see most of them here present, Veronica Movchan, Denis Senusa, Stephen Blockmans, and Giannodio is not an author of the paper, but he's a frequent contributor to our activities. I turn now to make a succinct presentation of our paper. The key words are a new momentum needed for restructuring both enlargement and neighbourhood policies, because both of these policies are not entirely satisfactory, if I put it like that diplomatically. The perceived incentives to drive the reform process, economic and political, are not strong enough, either in the Balkans or in the Eastern European countries. Okay, the paper has two basic parts, two very different parts. One is fairly technical, with quantified and commented on ratings for all of the chapters of the enlargement process and the chapters of the association agreements and DCFTAs, which are largely the same. That's technical stuff. I come to that in a moment. And the second part is about policy and systemic ideas that might be contributing to a new momentum. Right, on the ratings business, you see there's masses of statistical detail and many sources in the paper, but the key starting point are the Commission's annual reports on the Balkan states. Katerina Matarovna, I see you're there, and you and your colleagues have been doing a lot of very serious professional work there. And in particular, in your very detailed annual reports for each chapter, you give coded summary language. Your codes are good progress, moderate progress, or some progress in terms of alignment on EU standards. So we do two things with that material. First, it is quite easy to translate these qualitative ratings into numerical ratings, which we do on the scale of 3 to 1 or 0. And this has the great advantages that they can be aggregated and averaged and used as clearer benchmarks. Now, the second thing we do with this is that we apply exactly the same methodology with quantified ratings for Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And so we have a perfectly comparable, more or less perfectly comparable set of data, which you'll see lined up in table 17 on pages 49 to 51 of our paper. Now, all of that sounds rather technical for the moment, but the real political point here, before passing on to the political stuff, is that this provides potentially the basis for more clearly benchmarked monitoring and conditionality. Now, on the substance of the results, I would say little because my three colleagues from the three countries can come in more on this, but broadly the story is that the two groups are roughly comparable in the aggregate, with the Balkans on average a bit ahead on political legal criteria, whereas the East Europeans have advanced much more on trade and economic cooperation matters. I should say the data is up to date with the particular reference to Georgia, because we have been very careful not to ignore recent developments, which in terms of political governance have been pretty bad in Georgia. However, this could even be corrected within the next 2 weeks as a result of Charles Michel's mission to Georgia last week. So you could have a turnaround there. Giandolia, no doubt, will update us on that. Right, now into the policy stuff. First point is that the Commission has been increasingly, not completely, but increasingly addressing the same policy instruments beyond the association agreements to both groups. The Energy Community Treaty is the oldest and most well-known example. Recent COVID-19 assistance is another one, and there are many other details there. So the point here is that there is a very welcome, in our view, convergence of the policy sets being addressed to the two groups, which is the basis upon which to build more substantial recommendations, to which I now turn. So this is all about the new, what could be the new desired momentum. Well, the first point comes back then to these ratings. One could have, I mean, the Commission could proceed next year to adapt their annual ratings to the Balkans by adopting the quantification methodology that we have proposed and apply that equally to the Eastern Balkan states. So there they would have established the basis for conditionality, more operational conditionality, giving meaning to the so far empty or vacuous or vague more for more statements, welcome statements, but empty in practice. Now, next point is there is already underway tendencies towards deeper sectoral integration, particularly in the case of Ukraine, which has led the campaign to accede to sectoral unions, energy, digital, customs, and so forth. And the Green Deal is the latest addition to this list. So this is an ongoing process, which is fine. And we would advocate that it be developed even more strongly. And the conditionalities in question there are the sector's own acquis. So that is clear. We can go further, and in terms of financial assistance, we can have the concept of progressive accession to the structural funds that would indeed be delivering on the more for more slogan, but every step towards fuller financial assistance would be linked to quantified ratings of the kinds that we have developed in the paper. So far, so good. All of this means that in the realm of economic and regulatory policies, there is an integration process underway that can go faster, can be more strongly integrated between the two regions, but our recommendations are building on what is of the present momentum. But this leads out, and now I come to the final chapter, as it were, to the issue of progressive participation in the EU's governing institutions. No taxation without representation, got the American Civil War of Independence underway. No approximation without representation could be a useful phrase in political debates with the partner states. This is all about giving better political legitimacy to this heavy process of approximation of EU laws. That legitimacy is absent, or largely absent today. So how to overcome that? Well, in principle, it means looking at each of the institutions of the EU and examining how far it might be possible with goodwill to have a system of progressive integration into participation in the institutions. Now, the biggest sticking point, the most, from the EU point of view, the most understandable one, concerns the number of seats around the council table, with every member state there retaining veto rights over some areas still of EU policy. If I may be simple and brutal, the Polish-Hungarian experiences, almost vetoing the COVID recovery plan, this has left a deep mark which will not quickly be dissipated. But this does not mean that nothing can be done with the Council. And in particular, the European Economic Area has a dialogue process with the sectoral councils, and the joint letter of the 3 associated states of Eastern Europe, which is publicly available, a joint letter of the 1st of February of this year, advocates something similar for the partner states. Okay, now I go on to the European Parliament, and it's a bit cheeky for me to speak very freely about this, but anyway, I'm an independent person, and in my view, in our view, progressive participation of the partner states in the workings of the European Parliament are much easier to contemplate than for the Council, because it's not a problem of numbers, because you're already at 700, so a few more doesn't make that much difference. In any case, you're voting on a simple majority basis in general. And so these factors make it possible to conceive in due course to have, dependent upon political criteria, conditionality, progressive participation in the Parliament with your elected members, so many, how many, with or without, first of all, but then later with voting rights. You could have a chain of progressive developments that are easy to envisage, if you'll excuse me saying that. It is easy. Obviously, very complex political question, but basically, conceptually, it's more straightforward than for the European Commission, where the issue is how to reduce the number of commissioners rather than increase them. But here, one can put down a marker and say this long-standing issue of the Commission might be resolved one day by having a constituency system for a single commissioner representing several member states, like on the IMF board. But in the meantime, you could have eligibility for staff employment in the Commission. The EU's consultative institutions, Economic and Social Committee and Committee of the Regions, no problem. You go ahead relatively easily there. Agencies of the EU, well, this is already happening, and so can be pursued. So overall, we have here, to use a relatively new piece of Euro speak, we're having a further development of the model of differentiated integration, which you can use if you like it. If you don't like it, you can leave it out. But this is recalling that within the existing structures of the EU, not all member states are in all EU policies, and some non-member states are in EU policies, Schengen, Euro, and so forth. So there we are. So the new momentum being advocated is that it should, for the future, envisage progressively both functional and institutional integration with carefully designed conditionality structures that can be built on a quantification of the ratings that we've illustrated in our paper. As regards the question of membership perspectives, this old tired expression, we are advocating that the EU get away from in or out concepts and think in terms and act in terms of progressive step-by-step integration. These are issues that can reasonably go into the forthcoming conference on the future of Europe, but it will take quite some time probably. But in any case, the kind of measures advocated here can progress on the basis of existing competences of the EU in the cases of economic and regulatory policies, or may be open for provisional steps or informal institutional arrangements that don't require treaty revision. Thank you. Oh,
Thanks a lot, Michael.
Our chairman has disappeared.
No, I'm
he
still
is announced.
No, sorry, no,
back.
No. I am here.
Oh, there you are. Sorry,
yeah. Still, I am. Still, Parliament Conference of Presidents is working very slow and late, so I am able to chair the meeting for time being. But if I will switch off, so Michael will continue. So now, really, Michael, thanks a lot for your very good presentation, very deep and detailed presentation of the report. Now we have experts who were working together with Michael, on this report. And the first one will be Ms. Veronika Movchan, who represents also Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting, Kiev.
Colleagues, dear friends and colleagues, thank you very much. It's my great pleasure and honor to be today and speak on behalf of our Ukrainian team and actually on behalf of our old team for the discussions related to Ukraine, because we had a very, very intense and acute debate how to ensure that the comparison that we did is really accurate, up-to-date, and methodologically sound. I think that the topic that we are discussing today, new momentum for European integration for the Balkans and Eastern European associated states, is very important for my country, and I believe also for the European Union and its neighborhood in general. As Michael already said, the creation of new momentum is open the way for deeper integration, and I think that we also stated that in the paper, full membership. It has been something that Ukraine has aspired for many years. Definitely the association agreement has been the great stage in achieving this goal, and the most recent events, I mean EU-Ukraine Association Council that just happened last month, and the ongoing visit of the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, to Kiev that is happening now, highlight the deepness and comprehensiveness of links that our countries, our states developed up to now, and actually also the aspirations to deepen these relations further. For example, we have a couple takeaways from the Council that highlight this statement. The parties announced to move forward with a comprehensive review of the association agreement according to the article of the agreement, and start consultations with the review of the trade liberalization of the DCFTA. Also, there is a recognition and active work on the approximation of policies and legislation of this EU Green Deal, the most ambitious, I think, the agenda that will define our policy and social debates for many years ahead. The same ambition is raised, I mean, the ambition for deeper cooperation is raised by the joint letter of foreign ministers of Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova that was recently sent to the EU. So basically the topic that we need, the associations agreement are great, the current, they increase and allow much deeper cooperation, but something needs to be done further. It's in the air, and it's not only in the air, it's in the policy, and it's a policy debate at the highest political level between our states. And our analysis showed our comparison showed that actually Ukraine moved forward a lot, and I'm very grateful for Mr. Kovacev for recognizing that Ukraine and other states did a lot in the implementation of association agreements. Basically, we did assessments of 27 various parameters that represent all key elements of the association agreement. And they showed that for Ukraine, trade and economic and sectoral cooperation are much more important, not important, all important, but much more effective, while Ukraine is still lagging behind in the rule of law and anti-corruption efforts. First, I will say what was done for good, and then I will say where we have the still challenges and tasks for the future. I think that one of the major achievements of the recent period of reforms and implementation of the association agreement are, first of all, public procurement, with the establishment of the absolutely new transparent system of online public procurement Prozora that was recognized by not only by our partners in the EU, by EBRD, by the World Bank. It became one of the example case of the public procurement. But more importantly, it allowed ensuring that the money, the budget money, the state budget money, they are used properly. This is one of the major challenges for the economies like Ukraine, to be sure that the budget is spent effectively and transparently. Other important challenges that and are important reforms are the product safety. There are now discussions of ACA, Agreement on Conformity Assessment and Acceptance of Industrial Products, and I'm really happy that the pre-assessment mission of the European Union is now working with Ukraine, because Ukraine has did the first round of legal harmonization already in 2014. It appeared it was not complete, but it took many years to work systematically on what was done and what has to be done. I'm sure that this comprehensive review of the mission will give a roadmap that allow Ukraine to finalize its efforts, because Ukraine has already did a lot. It did not do it perfectly, as the first rumors about the conclusions of the mission show up, but they did a lot to penetrate into the European and other markets with these products, and the completion of this process will give not only economic benefits, but also some important like image benefits, prestige benefits for the country. Food safety is other important sphere there. Ukraine is moving steadily ahead, and I'm happy to say that last year we had the first recognition of equivalence, which is something similar to ACA, so something that's saying that this system of safety in this sphere is working equivalently to the European sphere. It's in seats, which is important. And also we have a lot of progress in animal origin products, in general in the food safety. Financial markets is another sphere that was very much challenged for many years, and we have a lot of progress here. Probably the best indication that something changed is that over 2020, despite the economic crisis, we didn't have any crisis in the banking sector, because all years before, banking sector was the first to feel the crisis and to respond to the crisis. By a lot of non-performing loans, we still have them accumulated from the previous periods, not fully cleaned. But now the situation really changed, and Ukraine is gradually implementing the quite rigorous European legislation. Energy sector, another very complex and very difficult sector for Ukraine, where we have the reforms in the gas and electricity market that allowed concluding absolutely new agreement with Russia on transit based on the third package of European norms and rules. So creating also opportunity integrating Ukrainian system of transit and gas storages into the European system. There is some progress in energy saving and energy efficiency. There is a boost in renewable energy. The system is not developed perfectly, but for sure Ukraine is developing here. I'm not saying that Ukraine did everything greatly, perfectly, and the path is straight and fast. There are a lot of hurdles, but the country is definitely moving forward. We have, and moving forward in any aspect, in customs, competition, consumer rights, many, many others. For me, the major challenges and drawbacks that Ukraine currently faces, and it's properly reflected in our assessment, is in rule of law and anti-corruption. 2020 was a very difficult year for these spheres in Ukraine, with a lot of decisions, especially of the Constitutional Court, dragging back achievements of anti-corruption infrastructure and institutions. So there was decisions of the parliament to overcome decisions of the court, but I would not say that this story is over. Still, I would say that it's very good news that the president just announced the relaunch of the judiciary reform as one of the priorities for these incoming years. So if we look at the scores, we see that Ukraine performed quite good in trade and economic spheres. It also performed quite good in the ballot box, electoral legislation, decentralization, political elements improved definitely. Here is still lagging behind in very fundamental issues of rule of law and de-corruption. But still, if we compare it with other countries, we see that we are still on par. Every country has its own fights and its own ups and downs. But despite all these ups and downs, the geopolitical ambiguity is gone, the direction is clear, and the path is also absolutely clearly defined. So this comparison of Balkans and three associated states, for me, it allows making much more like vocal requests that for you, our regions should be treated equally, should be treated in a way that we have similar opportunities, we have similar aspirations, and we should get similar instruments how to realize these aspirations. Therefore, for me, this study and the ideas presented there are very important. It's a new way forward, better structured, much more clear, without these mixed signals, and that would be very welcome. How Ukrainian stakeholders would react? We did not present that in Ukraine yet. This is the first presentation, so I can take only my assumptions. But what I would expect for Ukrainian citizens, the clear-cut path, this more differentiated but clearly defined stages and options for deeper integration would be definitely welcome, because people are generally supporting deeper integration with the EU, with about half of the population saying yes, for sure, for EU integration, and actually ambiguity of Russian integration decreased strongly, but a lot of people say that they want something like third path. So the message for them that EU is offering some clear-cut stages would be great. For business, association agreement, DCFTA, energy union, and all other sectoral cooperation and visa-free also. This is all welcomed opportunities that are actively used, and the business is actually demanding more opportunities, more opening. For government integration, the EU is a strategic goal, and the clear roadmap with more detailed sectoral opportunities is what is Ukrainian government is actually calling for. And yet, finally, also important, maybe last but not least, that Ukraine is fighting the war with Russia. And it's not only conventional military trade wars, it's an informational fight. And the message that EU does not want Ukraine, does not need Ukraine, it's manipulative, but it's actively used. For Ukraine, this opportunity for staged by clear-cut path to the membership, for path to the deeper integration will be essential. Because I am really grateful for European Parliament that always suggests and highlights that Ukraine deserves a membership and it will happen eventually. It's important, but long-term statements, they are, in the modern world, they are losing a bit of appeal. They are dusted by short-term shocks. So clear-cut stages is something that would give much better and comprehensive signal to the society, to the business, to the partners. It offers steps, it offers flexibility, it gives the goal and opportunities. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to participate in the creation of this idea, and I hope it will be taken seriously in Brussels and in member states and will be actually implemented. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Veronica. Thanks a lot. Really, I see that there are a lot of things which we need to discuss, and time is running very fast. So I will ask next speakers to be maybe, to try to keep somewhere around of 7 minutes in our presentation. So next expert is Denis Tsanusha from expert group Chisinau. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kubilius. I'm glad to be part of this effort and exercise where we really try to improve the chances for Eastern European countries, but mostly for the associated states to actually have a better understanding of where we stand in the relationship with the European Union and how close we are to the EU membership perspective. I'm glad that that Veronica did a great job and she introduced many aspects, so I will try not to repeat what she mentioned in her presentation, but I will focus on Moldova and what we are observing in this country right now. We have used some other materials, publications that we are producing together with Michael Emerson and other experts from our countries, Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. So the new Momentum publication is also based on other expertise that we have developed so far. And I'm thankful to the Swedish government for supporting this initiative. Moldova, unfortunately, looks a little bit less, let's say, well-performing country compared to Georgia and Ukraine. In the case of macroeconomic situation and the political one, Moldova is having worse results than, for instance, the trade cooperation and economic field of EU-Moldova relations, and that's somehow reflected in the figures, because we know very well that Moldova is one of the most integrated in terms of trade country from the associated group. We have around 65% of trade that goes to the EU, and at the same time we have another linkage which is emerging, and this is This is related to the remittances. Moldova is receiving from the EU countries about 45% of remittances that comes from Moldovans, from the diaspora and Moldovan immigrants who are settled in the EU. And this gives like a very clear perspective about how important is the European Union to the Moldovans. And the same goes, the same kind of closeness that Moldovans feel towards the EU is also indicative if we look at the polls, which are showing clearly that the European integration or the EU as a perspective for foreign orientation of the country is about 50% of the total support, and this is 2 times more than the Eurasian Union, which is fiercely promoted by some pro-Russian political parties in Moldova. So we have these trade aspects which are very optimistic. Moldova is developing the trade with the EU, and the European market is becoming more and more attractive for the Moldovan businesses. But on the other hand, we have the good governance and rule of law, which also touches upon the corruption, where Moldova is not performing well. And that's exactly where Moldova is delivering worse. And we will see in the New Momentum publication that Moldova is actually lagging behind compared to Ukrainian colleagues and Georgian ones. If we take in a more detailed analysis or look at the progress that Moldova has made so far, obviously Moldova is trying to delineate or to separate its dialogue with the EU. This is my feeling, because when the politics is on the wrong path, then a huge attention is given to the dialogue on trade, and there we saw good initiatives, including in the field of SPS. We have recently learned that Moldova is very close to finish the preparation for the evaluation on being able to export the animal origin food, which in this case, in the first attempt, is for the eggs, but then hopefully it will be for other products as well. This means that some work is done in terms of conformity for the laboratories and the standards, and at the same time, the TBT is the non-tariff barriers is also a place where Moldova is showing good progress, because the biggest number of European standards, I think, out of 3 countries is adopted in Moldova, and this is a good thing. Now we need to work on making them actually practical, useful for the business, and creating preconditions for more business to work with the European partners. If to focus specifically on who is going to win and who is going to benefit from what we recommended in our publication, obviously the main winner will be the population, because the signal that the new Momentum paper is giving is that rule of law, the fighting of corruption, reform of judiciary are priorities, and the European Union should stay very strong on keeping the conditionality to have a progress in these areas. This also should include for Moldova the improvement of the political dialogue between the presidency office and the parliament, in order to have as soon as possible early elections, to create a new configuration in the legislative branch, and to give it an opportunity to create a more pro-reform government that would support the agenda of the new president Maia Sandu. And all of this is a very positive trend that I can see from our recommendations to the European partners, but also for the European public. And on the other hand, obviously, as Veronica mentioned, the business is waiting for the improvement of the political conditions and good governance. This also should mean that the prosecutor office and other institutions that are working in the field of anti-corruption should really make sure that the rent-seeking practices are stopped, that the abuses of the office is not a common feature for the relationship between the business and the state authorities, and in general that the sense of fighting corruption is becoming a prominent effort for the entire political class, because this is a problem. Moldova is a corrupt country. Everybody understands that, but the actions to fight this, in a way, this a negative aspect is not as visible in the political arena, apart from some political parties with pro-EU views. So overall, I would like to support the initiative of the European Parliament to promote the opportunity to actually bring the two regions together and to show that Eastern Partnership countries are, in some regards, are even better performers than the Western Balkan states, which means that we can deliver reforms, which means that Moldova, as Ukraine and Georgia, should have a very clear roadmap to the EU membership perspective. And here I will end my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Denis. And now we're turning to Georgia. Gia Nodia from Ilya State University, Tbilisi, please. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. I will try to stick to my talking notes and hope we'll be under 10 minutes. Now, first, I will start by very highly praising the New Momentum initiative and the wording of it. There is a strong feeling that after association agreements, DCFTAs and visa-free regimes for the three countries, there have been no obvious achievements, or there is nothing like a distinct and understandable roadmap, as Dionis just said, in the relations between the EU and its neighborhood. And this absence is damaging for us. But I would also dare to say that this initiative of qualitatively enhancing the role of Europe in our region is something that Europe needs as well. Our three countries, is a place where the magic of the European idea still works more than elsewhere. To be sure, this is a very difficult region, difficult for obvious geopolitical reasons, as well as for problems and divisions within each country. But this is the region where Europe can make a lot of difference. And this difference will be welcomed by majorities in local societies. So this is also a chance for the EU to show that it can be important, successful, and popular. We in Georgia are in the middle of another political crisis, so I cannot do otherwise but focus on it. This crisis escalated after the police stormed the headquarters of the United National Movement, Georgia's strongest opposition party, to arrest its leader, Nika Melia. But it started after the opposition refused to accept the results of October 2020 parliamentary elections as fraudulent and decided to boycott parliament. The government and the opposition have diametrically opposed views on both these issues. The government claims that there was nothing wrong about elections and it had strong legal grounds to arrest Melia. The opposition says that it was deprived of an electoral victory and that Melia's arrest was politically motivated and part of the government's plan to destroy the opposition. Whatever we think of these arguments, the crisis is threatening the future of the Georgian democracy. It is also obviously linked to the topic of our seminar, which is the issue of Europe in Georgia, in my country's case, or Georgia in Europe. There is a broad understanding that the stakes in this crisis are very high. This is not about who will or will not be in Georgia's government. No, the question is, will Georgia make a turn towards authoritarianism? Will its political system make a step in the direction of Russia and Belarus? Or it continues to be an aspiring democracy, even if a deeply imperfect one. This also makes the outcome of the crisis very important for the future relations between Georgia and Europe. This is not my personal view only, although I strongly concur with it. This assessment is widely shared by pro-democracy society in Georgia, but also by friends of Georgian democracy in Europe, as well as in the United States. But at this point Europe is much more active. It was clearly stated by many European politicians, including Charles Michel, the chairman of the European Council, who visited Georgia this Monday with an explicit aim of helping resolve this crisis. Michel said that the EU should move from facilitation to mediation in trying to resolve relations between the Georgian government and the opposition. We interpret this as saying that the EU has to have a much more direct and much higher level involvement in the resolution of the crisis. After a meeting involving the government and opposition representatives and Michel, the Georgian political elite and government got a specific assignment, as it were, to come up with a feasible plan to resolve the crisis within 2 weeks, when Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili is expected in Brussels. The failure to show some achievement will affect Georgia's future relations with Europe. It was not spelled out what exactly these negative consequences will be, but even the word sanctions is occasionally mentioned by some European politicians. At this point, we don't know what the outcome of the talks between government and opposition will be. 3 days out of 14 have already passed. We cannot say there is any progress on any of the issues. However, if there is a realistic hope of resolving this crisis in a way that does not imply Georgia's turn towards authoritarianism, this hope is linked to Europe's close involvement that is now expressed in the term of mediation. So if our panel happened 1 week ago, I would have been in a much gloomier mood than I am today. Now there is some hope, at least. And it is due to this high-level European mediation. These hopes were revived thanks to some changes that we had as a direct result of the Michel visit. First of all, the government drastically changed its rhetoric. Before this meeting, Prime Minister Garibashvili ruled out any dialogue with the opposition that it frequently defined as a criminal force. He was known for his statements that the government's aim is not just to defeat the opposition in the elections, it is to destroy it. Now he is engaged in dialogue, and his rhetoric after the Michel facilitated meeting was that he spoke about the opposition in respectful terms and expressed willingness to further dialogue. If before the government did not recognize that anything deserving a wording of crisis was taking place, now it appeared to accept that some special efforts were indeed needed. The opposition was also criticized for its intransigence. The decision not to accept the results of parliamentary elections was met by nearly unanimous criticism from the international community. Frankly, I also criticized this decision. However, to understand, while this was criticized because violations were obvious and pervasive, but the opposition did not have a conclusive evidence that they changed the overall results of the election. However, it has to be noted that all 8 opposition parties were unified in that stand of boycott. Only one small party later changed its mind. These parties disagree on many things, but they are still adamant that their decision was correct. Whether we like it or not, their position reflects a new mood of the large part of the Georgian electorate, that the process of state capture by a billionaire, Bidzina Ivanishvili, who is still widely believed to be behind the Georgian Dream government, has gone too far. And this state capture would not allow for a normal electoral change of government. While the West asks the opposition to work through the institutions, the opposition response is that the institutions, including the courts as well as electoral administration, are captured by Ivanishvili and his team, so they cannot work through that. One may agree or disagree with this assessment of the situation, but this mood within large part of the pro-democracy and pro-Europe public in Georgia is genuine, and the opposition thinks it would lose credibility if it does not respond to it. This makes resolving the conflict difficult, as positions of the parties are widely apart. The opposition demands new elections and release of what it calls the political prisoners. One possibility of a compromise is plebiscite on the necessity of new elections. But just elections, just calling elections is not sufficient. There should be changes in electoral legislation and electoral administration as well. So far, the government has showed some readiness to make concessions as concerns electoral legislation. But on the next day after the meeting with Michel, Premier Garibashvili said that the issues of early elections and political prisoners are a red line for the government and it will not accept compromise on that. Critics believe that this was a reversal of his position on the previous day when he agreed with a 6-point framework for the negotiations with the opposition drafted during the Michel mediated meeting, which included the issues of alleged political prisoners and potential new elections. This does not mean that some middle ground cannot be found in these 11 days left, but it will not be easy. As Michel has mentioned, while Georgia may be ahead, as Michael, has mentioned, while Georgia may be ahead of other DCFTA countries with regards to anti-corruption or some other indicators of good governance, trade, etc., it's lagging behind on electoral democracy. And this crisis demonstrated this. I would say that there are two major issues that pro-democracy and pro-European Georgian society agrees are crucial for the future of the Georgian democracy: electoral democracy and the system of justice. But both these issues are on the table in these EU-mediated negotiations. And they are on the table both with regards to resolving pending issues, hot issues like alleged political prisoners like Melia and Georgi Rurua, or early elections. But there is also an issue of systemic institutional changes that would produce trust, public trust to both these systems. Evidently, also, these two issues are interrelated. It is hardly possible to have fair and credible elections if the courts are captured or are believed to be captured by the incumbent government. This cannot be solved easily and overnight. There is a perception in Georgia that we are deadlocked, especially as far as the justice system is concerned. But resolving the ongoing crisis, or the way in which the ongoing crisis will be resolved, will also show how we will be able to tackle these deeper systemic problems. Thank you.
I think Andris Kubilius, he is temporarily absent, so I take over for a few minutes. Thank you very much, Jeff, for that very, very fascinating, up-to-date account. And we all follow what is happening with the greatest of interest, and you've given us the framework for that. Just before passing on to the next three panelists, all diplomats from the missions to the EU, I noticed one chat question came through, which was from Tiona Lavridashvili, who sounds a little bit Georgian, who asks whether we should add to our institutional arguments in our paper to the idea that the partner states ought themselves to be invited to participate both governmental level and societal level in the conference for the future of Europe. I believe the Balkans are cooking up some kind of request along these lines. and then for the Eastern Partnership, 3 associates. I think this is a very pertinent suggestion, which we could have included in our paper. Thank you for that. So let us move on to the next session. First, we have Irina Yefremova, who is deputy head of the mission of Ukraine to the European Union. Irina, over to you. Are you there, Irina?
Yes, thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. I believe that we have our well, message from my ambassador of Ukraine, Ambassador Tochitsky. Is it? Yes.
Dear MEPS Andres Kubilis, dear colleagues, dear ambassador, we are grateful to Andres Kubilis for launching and supporting this initiative, and CEPS for this in-depth study. This is very timely and important event against the background of a significant intensification of the TRIO initiative. TRIO countries have come to a critical point where their achievements do not coincide with the ambitions that the European Union allows. This study also proves that our ambitions for deeper political association and economic integration have meaningful basis. That analysis allowed us to see that the countries of the Western Balkans region have almost similar achievements. And I fully agree with Andreas Kubilis that in the first 5 years of the association, the TRIO has been able to overtake the countries of the Western Balkans, which had an EU membership perspective 10 years ago. We appreciate considering in the study the new momentum for closer association and integration with EU. TRIO countries continue to fight for their European choice in confrontation and war with Russia. Recently visiting Ukraine, the president of the European Council, Charles Michel, also stopped in Donbass and saw the consequences of Russia's aggressive policy, which would destroy the entire region. Dear colleagues, our aspirations for full-fledged membership in the EU are dedicated by real demands of the time. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes, that was the message from Ambassador Tochitsky, who is currently in Ukraine. He was accompanying the president of European Council for the visit to Ukraine, and it was a very successful visit, and we appreciate very much for all support given to the Mr. Charles Michel during the visit. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Irina. Yes, and now let's go to Moldova. Daniela Morari, Ambassador of Moldova to the European Union. Over to you, Daniela.
Thank you very much, Michael. Good morning to everyone. I would like to join the other speakers and thanking Mr. Kubilius and his team of putting it together, this initiative. And also thank you to you, Michael, and to Denise and to colleagues from CEPS to doing all this work and all the effort. And indeed, it's kind of building on the very valuable handbooks that worked for all 3 countries on the association agreements. I'm going into details. And know how complicated our association agreements are, and it's very also valuable to have more people on board and knowing all the tiny details. And also building the previous study that you already worked on, 3 of us, And indeed, I agree that it's a timing of having these discussions. And indeed, it's a momentum, I would say. The good timing, it comes through a few reasons. First, it's also a good timing for preparing the future deliverables post-2020 within the Eastern Partnership after a long brainstorming phase that we had last year, and also like after the implementation and also looking on these 20 deliverables for 2020. Now it's indeed the work to see a very concrete and ambitious and visionary objectives for all of us to work for the future. And also it comes really in time and in line with our joint letter that our Ministers of Foreign Affairs signed on 1st of February, where we are asking member states and the institutions to engage in identifying new areas and new forms for deeper cooperation with all three countries that we have association agreements. We believe that indeed more substance and more vision for post-2020 deliverables is needed, and this will facilitate also the negotiations for the future joint declaration that we all know that sometimes is a challenging exercise for all of us. And we believe that more substance also can be put in enhanced cooperation in all the kind of sectors that some of you referred, like transport and energy and digital transformation and Green Deal and justice, home affairs, strategic communication and healthcare. And also enhancing security and defense cooperation with special focus on hybrid threats. It's also of particular interest for us, and deepening cooperation going beyond the DCFTA. It's one of the areas where we're very interested. This study has a particular double relevance and symbolism for Moldova, taking into consideration that Moldova is the only country that we're from the Eastern Partnership part in all the structures of the Western Balkans, RCC, CECP, Central European Initiative. Even next year, we're going to be presidency of CEFTA, and we're taking part in all the decision-making processes. We're agreeing priorities for the future and also implementing similar homework, but without the tools and instruments that are available for the Western Balkans. We welcome the work that was done in order to compare. We believe it's so necessary to have this kind of valid arguments and kind of to do the work of comparison. Also the methodology that was used to based on already journal accepted reports and data and different references. And indeed, this work makes to recognize several truths. One is that indeed we managed to deliver and register progress, like 3 of countries that we have association agreements in very short time, just like since we started implementation of our association agreements, and without, as my other colleagues also referred, without having the perspective and without having access to the financial instruments that the Western Balkans have. And also to recognize and to highlight and to put more emphasis of the need to further continue to share different platforms and instruments that were offered to Western Balkans to countries as kind of Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. We already being part in all these structures would have even more examples where this cooperation kind of is beneficial and where we already interconnect or interlinked in different platforms or different initiatives where different countries from 3AA are part, and then a differentiation within the West Balkans we can share afterwards with the authors that kind of worked on that maybe can be valuable. And also we believe that this is not only for us valuable, but we believe it can be very useful also for Western Balkans because some of the work that we're doing within the Eastern Partnership, we see that also it can be in a way beneficial for the work and the platforms and the summits and the different in a way practical elements can be in a way on both kind of way. I personally read with high interest the study, and we resonate with the visionary approach that it's kind of in the ideas for the new momentum. Maybe some could consider that some of the ideas are premature or too ambitious, but we agree that it's important maybe to start a debate and to have a platform for discussions, a platform for brainstorm where we could also discuss ambitions and visionary ideas. We resonate and we agree that European Parliament is usually this platform where very ambitious and visionary ideas can be in a way debated, and we would just in a way resonate with this, and we'll start to contribute. And we believe that such a debate and such further discussions could fit in the future, in a way, a conference on the future of Europe. Like, we'll just welcome this in a way approach. Being a very pragmatic in a way, I also would be interested how from some of the ideas that have been already mentioned within the study, we can also discuss and they can, some of the ideas can be taken on board within the like work on the future deliverables for the Eastern Partnership, and also on the way for the summit of Eastern Partnership that should take place in the second part of this year. And also taking consideration that now it's a lot of work in shaping the ways of the new programs of the European Union for the next 7 years. Also, it would be important to see how some additional access can be offered for the countries within the Eastern Partnership, or namely the 3 countries that are implementing association agreements. Just would like to double highlight the support and the commitment of the Republic of Moldova to join this work, and to see how we further in a way could build and to extend many of the good ideas that have been highlighted in the study. Thank you very much.
Andreas, I see you're back.
Yeah.
But just to make sure we don't miss something, it is now Zurab Kamzaridze who should speak.
You should, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Mikhail, for your
Welcome
great job.
Back.
I am back. Yeah.
Andreas is back.
Yeah, okay. Not only Biden, but also I. Okay.
Good afternoon to everybody. I'm replacing Ambassador Natalia Savanadze, who is on board of a plane flying from Georgia to Brussels as we speak. So I would like to join the previous panelists and thank the organizers for this webinar, but also special thanks to the authors of this study, which is very timely and necessary. It contains interesting ideas that can be picked up, developed, but also translated into concrete policy steps. The study points out that with the association agreements and the DCFTAs, the most advanced integration instruments, the association trio achieved a lot and has been able to catch up with the countries of the Western Balkans. Hence the need on the EU side to catch up and adapt policy doctrines to the realities. The EU can also consider applying the same policy instruments towards both the Balkans and the associated countries, which as the study puts, would encourage the countries and possibly boost reform agenda in other partner countries too. We agree with the notion that at this current important juncture for the Eastern Partnership, the EU must take next brave geopolitical steps, as also said in the foreword of the study. This brave step is needed, especially against the backdrop of the EU developing a new generation of deliverables and the ongoing work on the joint staff working document, which will define the EU strategy towards the Eastern Partnership for the years to come. The upcoming Eastern Partnership Summit gives us, both the partners as well as the EU, such an opportunity. It should address the ongoing political and security developments in the region, which is still plagued by conflicts, occupation, and open military confrontation. We also welcome the idea of the conference on the future of Europe to address the recommendations described in this study. For the future of this, the partnership is also Europe's future, and EU's active engagement with the associated trio is EU's investment in strengthening democracy, expanding the area of prosperity and security in the EU's eastern neighborhood. In this respect, this study is a timely contribution to the preparation for the EAP summit and can serve as a guide, including beyond 2021 summit. It can also encourage debate about how to find best solutions which would advance the principle of differentiation, more for more, as well as ensure conditionality and inclusivity. These two sets of goals are compatible and by no means represent a challenge to the structure of the EAP, as every EAP partner is free to choose the level, speed, and the nature of the engagement with the EU. There are also areas which the study says requires better performance by the associated trio, and where improvements are expected. It also shows the varying degree of progress among the trio countries in their relations with the EU, as well as in the process of the implementation of the association agreements and the DCFTAs. Besides, the study rightly points out to the preparedness, I would rather say the unpreparedness of the EU for further enlargement, which will be one of the, if not the key factors associated trio should take into account while taking policy decisions at the national level with regard to the membership question. Just to briefly sum up, trio has been performing well, but improvements are still needed and expected. The EU needs to take brave, creative steps and offer trio a new set of goals that goes beyond the association agreements and the DCFTAs. Solid and converging similarities exist between the countries of the Western Balkans, including the candidate countries and the associated trio. And last but not least, geopolitical considerations cannot be ignored, especially given the developments in the region, which require EU's response, for example, more active engagement in the areas such as security and defense, strengthening resilience, countering hybrid threats, disinformation, and other areas. I will stop here and pass back to you. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Zurab. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate very much your statement. We wish all the best for Georgia to overcome the crisis, you know, and still really in the report, Georgia is featuring as real front runner. So let's hope that it will continue now. Now we are turning to next stage of our discussion, very important one, and we shall have views from institutions, EU institutions, and I will ask Mrs. Katerina Maternova, whom we know very well, Deputy Director General at DG NEAR, and also acting head of SGUA for Ukraine, to take the floor now.
Thank you very much, Andrius, and dear friends, colleagues. Thanks a lot, Michael, for the presentation and all the participants in the discussion. I think it's in fact very welcome to have a more strategic discussion on how to go about the future. We are obviously in the process of revising or reviewing the policy for the next stage of the Eastern Partnership. The question of the balance between inclusiveness and tailor making, and also looking at the trio is on the agenda more than ever right now, especially with the current situation in the partnership. And we hear, I think, increasingly comments of this sort. Last week we had a SGUA meeting with member states, and it was in fact Germany that brought the issue on the table of seeing what can be or should be done addressing the trio. Just let me point out, yes, Moldova was the first one, and I think Daniela made a good case of how Moldova is part of various institutions that covers the Western Balkans. But in fact, it's been Georgia and Ukraine that have taken the unprecedented steps, the step to actually enshrining in the constitution the desire to join the European Union. So I think that the comparison of how the EU approaches the Western Balkans and the Eastern Partnership, I think it's an intellectually interesting and certainly legitimate inquiry, and I'm sure that a lot of the parts of the study and studies recommendations is something that we will certainly be able to reflect on. But we live in the European reality as we do. We have foreign policy of the EU firmly in the hands of the member states, and as you know, views on not only Eastern Partnership but also the European future of the Western Balkans are spanning quite a wide spectrum. This is not to sound defensive. This is just the reality that we practice. But I think that within the constraints of the current setup, we actually have a lot that we can do. We have been doing, and I think we can expedite going forward. And I'm just going to use a few examples. We have, in fact, and this was done in a very different geopolitical context, we have, in fact, indeed, and I think this is where I would agree with the study, we have loaded the association agreements and the DCFTAs with quite a lot of expectations, and I would say regulatory burden on the shoulders of our partners, in fact, going beyond what happens in the pre-accession phase, currently countries that are going through the accession. So indeed, that was done. I'm not sure that would be the outcome if the policy was being designed now, but the process we are going through currently, we started with Ukraine, and I think this is the area where we can follow with the trio, is really taking full advantage and not being as shy as we perhaps might have been sometimes about what the association agreements and the DCFTAs offer. We are now exploring what it really means, the internal market treatment in several service areas. We are starting with the area of digital market, because this is something that's only evolving in the EU itself. And this is an area that if we really keep the momentum and our partners are able to go along with their own expectations and ambitions also practically in terms of the institutional setup and what the industry can deliver, this would go in fact beyond what is doable in a pre-accession context of being part of the internal market. Now, I don't think that we can or should oversell this. We have to go step by step, and we have to go really first in sectors where there is both mutual interest, but also I think the digital area is a perfect example where things are developing very dynamically, both in our partner countries and in the EU, and that can be done together. We already mentioned, I think the Ukrainian colleague mentioned the ACAs, the agreements of conformity, sort of the industrial visa-free regime, if you will, as it's sometimes referred to, which puts a very tall order on our partner countries, but we are now going through a process to see whether that can be done. We have gone through the visa liberalization process in all three. The trade is in fact very much increasing, and we are the main trading partner of all three of the countries. And I think this is certainly an area where there already has been openness, will continue to meet in the context of the trio with the EU institutions. And last but not least, we are
EU no territory.
Yeah, can you mute yourself?
Okay, and last but not least, there is a very sizable investment program that we are putting together for the countries. Going forward, we are just starting the new multi-annual financial framework, and I think that we will continue supporting a lot of the reforms and combine it with very, very targeted investments for the economies to help with the convergence aspect. Now, I would just like to say the one area where I'm not really sure I agree with the study is calling the policies that we have ad hoc. I mean, we may agree or one may agree or disagree with the ambition, with the full scope, etc. of the policies, but I think that both the neighborhood policy and the Eastern Partnership aspect, as well as the Western Balkans one, is a fairly coherent policy framework for both. And again, let me just remind that we indeed need to implement it very much under close scrutiny of the member states. So it is a very dynamic process from this point of view. And to just finish, I want to say that I think that some of the ideas on how to compare and maybe benchmark in a light way the countries is a valid one. Well, let us look into it. I also agree with the notion that the countries are objectively very comparable. I mean, there was a lot of discussion about the need for stronger anchoring of the rule of law and accountable judiciaries that are able to support both the economic activity as well as the individual rights. And I think that this is very much a theme that is common to Eastern Partnership countries, to the trio and the Western Balkan countries. And this way we will find a number of areas where the countries are very, very similar and comparable. So indeed, perhaps a little infusing a little competition into that would come from benchmarking is not a, yeah, and I will stop at this. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Katerina. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate very much for your comments and for what you are doing. And really, we hope that those ideas which are presented in the report will inspire all of us, both in all the institutions, in Parliament, in Commission, and also in External Action Service. So that's where we are now turning to Mr. Richard Tibbles, Head of Division Eastern Partnership Bilateral Relations from EAS. So, Richard, please, floor is yours.
Good morning.
Okay.
I seem to have a connection problem precisely at the end of Katerina's intervention when you were looking to me to intervene. So I'm glad I've got the screen back now. Firstly, thank you very much, Andreas, Michael, and the team at CEPS for this very, very timely report. It does make us at the coalface, I think beyond the today and the tomorrow to what is possible in the future. I'm very conscious of the time. Let me try and make four brief remarks. Firstly, I think the very fact of the President of the European Council's visit to the three associated countries over the past week is not just of symbolic importance, but also very tangible support for the three partner countries. and he's passed very, very clear messages in each of the three countries. Combined with that, I agree with those of you who have said that the COVID crisis has also shown that despite the different institutional relationships between partner countries and the EU, we are one European continent and we need to address issues together. So I think the COVID crisis has also broken down some barriers there. My second point is that I don't think we should underestimate the differentiation that we can apply within the existing Eastern Partnership policy framework. And as Katerina has said, as we now prepare for the summit later this year, I think we'll be examining how we can enhance differentiation in ways which respond to the partners' aspirations. I have to say, I don't think we should do this in a way which says there is one set of three countries and another set of three countries. I think we have to be careful that we look at this perhaps in a more functional and sectoral way. Where are there objective areas for the three associated countries to work together? We don't want to send a message, for example, that the very strong judicial reform efforts are in Armenia are not recognized by the EU as well. So I think it's important not to have a complete separation between three and three. Third point, I think we also mustn't underestimate that our association agreements and DCFTAs are dynamic agreements. So these are living agreements which we can develop as the partner countries develop and as the EU acquis develops. So we have the process of updating the annexes to the association agreements, and that's an ongoing process which really does ensure that the objectives that we have together are run in parallel to the EU acquis. And we have a number of review processes which have also been referred to already. A number in Ukraine have already started. DG Trade is doing some evaluations with regard to Georgia and Moldova at the moment. So all of these instruments are a way of ensuring that we get the most out of our association agreements. It is quite right that the think tank community looks beyond the current institutional setups, and many of the ideas that you've put forward in the study, I think, go beyond the existing institutional frameworks. Obviously, our focus is on what is possible within the current institutional frameworks. We know very well there is no appetite for any ratification processes or relating to new agreements at the moment. So we're very much focused on getting the most out of our existing setups. Fourth point, in all of our work, I think it is quite clear that issues related to the rule of law are essential in enabling us to move forward. The High Representative called judicial reform in relation to Ukraine the mother of all reforms. And I think that's the leitmotif that we use in our relations with all Eastern partners. And although I don't deal with the Balkans, maybe it's an area also where there is similarity between the Eastern Partnership and the countries of the Western Balkans. The President of the European Council passed equally strong messages with regard to this during his visit. So my message, I think, there is to enable us to move forward. It is vital that the partner countries on their side do redouble their efforts to tackle rule of law, judicial reform, corruption, and oligarchic economic models. Thanks very much, Andreas.
Sorry. Thanks a lot, Richard. Thanks very much. Now we are switching to a panel of members of our own parliament, and I am very happy to see that we have quite a group of them. In European Parliament, as you know, we can speak only not more than 2 minutes. That's our regulation, and I will try to be very strict. Since at 1 o'clock we promised that we shall be switched off, so that's a problem. And I am very happy to introduce the first speaker, which is quite unique. Mr. Sanchez Amor, Nacho, unique since it's one of the Mediterraneans who is really taking a lot of interest in development of Eastern Partnership region, and who is leading a working group in Euronest responsible for association countries. So, Nacho, please, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Andreas. Thank you for your proposal. Thank you for the initiative. I think it's very timely. I think I could understand this bureaucratic approach of the Commission and European External Service. Okay, we have this framework. What could we do in that framework? This is a normal thing coming from officials, but we are politicians, and we have to first analyze why the process is becoming to a kind of a sticky period. We are acting business unusual, and there are a lot of things happening outside our scope, and we have to review not only our tools, our political will to conduct or not this process. And I think we have to react. And to react is to put ideas on the table, like Andreas did with these ideas and with the study. We could discuss on the scope, on the feasibility, on the doability or not, but what we really need in the Parliament are these ideas. A couple of things. The first thing is the political will, because we understood that the societies in the association agreement countries and Western Balkan are engaged with European values and European perspective. Are the ruling elites the same? And I think we have to examine if the political will of the ruling elites is met the political will of the societies. Second, I comment with Andreas, to merge both areas, both geographical areas in one general scope could create some reluctance in the Western Balkans because they are formally candidate countries, and that creates not the support that these ideas needed. Is other thing to think about. And the third one and the last one, we have to change our way to approach the enlargement process because the geopolitical conditions change. Because now these societies, geographically near Europe, always have seen Europe as the model, but now there are other models in the political market, in the geopolitical market, and these models are also attractive for them. 25 years ago, the only model was everybody wants to be a mature Western democracy. Now it's changed completely, and there are other models, more illiberal models, more authoritarian threat model. And for that reason, we have to examine the things in a complete different way than we did in the early steps of this enlargement process. These are my ideas. Thank you, Andreas, for your invitation. I'm always ready to engage in that kind of things. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nacho. Thanks a lot. And I forgot to mention that Nacho also is a social democrat. Now we're turning to, I would like to ask Andrei Kovacev from EPP, Vice President of our group. And Andrei is also very much involved into Western Balkans. So that's, he knows both sides, both regions, and he's also, as I remember, standing rapporteur on some of South Caucasus countries.
On Armenia.
Armenia.
Exactly.
Well,
Thank you very much, Andreas, and thank you very much to all panelists, especially to Mr. Michael Emerson. I wrote very carefully your contribution and the comparison between Eastern Partnership country and the Western Balkan countries, which are after the Thessaloniki meeting, so to say, officially like a promise that they will become one day full member of the European Union. And this commitment from the part of the European Union was reconfirmed with the Sofia Declaration a few years ago. But as you can see, how difficult is also the discussion within the European Union. Our absorption capacity in the European Union Also on the, if you like, on the public opinion in many member states, although maybe how to say, politicians are saying one, but actually meaning something else, that full membership is something which cannot happen so fast, maybe with exception of Montenegro, which is a small country with less historical maybe issues and problems to be solved. Now the geopolitical influence from Russia is a point not only in the Eastern Partnership, but also in the Western Balkan, especially if we talk about Serbia and the Serbian influence in some countries of the region. And if we see the macroeconomical data, some other data which Mr. Emerson compare the both regions, you will see similarity, and in some area even Eastern Partnership country are a bit ahead than some countries from the Western Balkan. So in any case, there should be not a competition and should be not something like replacement of for the Western Balkan for the perspective of full membership, but in the public in Europe we are talking now about when their voices talking about something like it was before for Turkey, everything except institutions in the immediate something like an intermediate stage until the full membership, and for Eastern Partnership, the agreements which was signed with the European Union for sure need to be filled with more enthusiasm, more energy from European Union side to give them more strength for continuing of the reforms, for solving and uniting them also against influence which is coming from Moscow. If you go to Caucasus and Armenia, Azerbaijan, this is a big issue which I don't even like to open. I become a rapporteur only 1 week before starting of this unfortunate actions, very bloody actions in the region, and I don't know how this will end up finally, but we are observing with a big concern the situation there. But again, Andrews, thank you very much for all your efforts. Again, to Mr. Emerson for the work, and let's keep on this and continue our good cooperation in favor of the both regions and their integration as much as is possible into the European Union functional and institutional framework.
Well, thanks a lot, Andrei. And now I would like to ask Mrs. Viola von Kramon from Germany, Greens, and she knows, as I understand, she knows all the regions. I know that she knows Eastern Partnership, almost, I see the best knowledge among members of European Parliament with Viola, but as I know, she knows also very well Western Balkans. So Viola, please.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for the flowers and also for the opportunity to speak here. While I know that 2 minutes might be a little bit too limited, but nevertheless, I really enjoyed the discussion before, and I couldn't make it completely to read this study, but I know some of the authors, and they are very well known also in my house, since Veronika Movchan, I think, has worked with my husband several times, and very much appreciated here. So I will definitely look through this a little bit more carefully later on. But, well, no, it was very, very, let's say, one-sided, and everyone is absolutely on one side. And let me maybe put a little bit more realpolitik in the whole story. While I see that when I'm here back in Germany and when I'm in the West, let's put it that way, I'm lobbying, or the biggest lobbyist for Eastern Partnership and for the societies and for solidarity and for a clear rhetoric. But when I'm back in the countries of the Eastern Partnership, I would say, well, there are so many things ahead of us. And really, I mean, look through the homework we have to do together and be honest where we are. be it in the state of the Western Balkan. I've just finished my report on Kosovo, while I'm also a shadow on Serbia. And I mean, there's a state capturing going on a way which is really hard to tackle. And we are not even close to making those countries a serious offer. And I think this is also good that we can speak open about this. And we also should see what kind of developments we have in some of the member states within the European Union and why we have a high Euroscepticism in the members of the European Union, in the population and amongst our citizens. And sometimes hard to explain that we would strive, and I do this, for enlargement. And so I think we have to put things a little bit together and also make clear that if we go on with supporting the Western partner, the states and the Western Balkan, which we do, the Eastern Partnership, which I'm heavily in favor of, then we need results, and we have to have clear criteria, and we would like to have a performance which matches with the investment we have done. And this sometimes falls apart, to be honest. So I see, for example, now in Georgia, I'm a big friend and a leading member of the DEC. I would be heavily in favor to go there to start some kind of mediation. The political crisis is really tragic, but what they have done out of the association agreement is also a tragic situation. They have done almost nothing in the last years and months. And so, I mean, really start with your homework first, and then we can speak about further steps towards, Trio Plus or whatsoever. Moldova, there's still a heritage of this state capturing system of the oligarch, and everyone knows that. And it's of course up to us to help and to support, but nevertheless, it is also up to us to see some substantial success and some substantial progress before we enter the next stage. So yes, we will support you, and we will put, hopefully, more money than in the past. We have not even spoken about countries such as Belarus and now Nagorno-Karabakh and the regions where, and also the east of Ukraine, where a lot of money will be needed. But recently I was in a very interesting call with former Ambassador Michael McFaul, and he made a point which I think is crucial for all of us to think about. The best help to overcome the Putin's regime is functioning democracies in all the Eastern Partnership countries. And he reminded the Ukrainians first to start with a functioning rule of law system, with a functioning democracy. And still, I mean, we can speak about all the economical similarities and opportunities. As I said, I'm in favor, but nevertheless, from the political side, from the homework side, I see that this is still balanced. The EU has to deliver, and we have not really done this when it comes to visa liberalization in Kosovo. That's a disaster after 3 years of promising and not delivering. But on the other hand, I'm also very strict when it comes to our partner states and our partners in the states to speak up very, very frankly and openly what needs to be done.
Thanks a lot, Viola. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate very much. Now I would like to ask Siegfried Muresan from EPP, from Romania, and also head of Moldova delegation, and also, being next to Balkans and being next to Moldova. So Siegfried, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So the important question is, why are we not farther ahead when it comes to supporting the Eastern Partnership, when it comes to getting the Eastern Partnership countries closer to the European Union? And the truth is, because of the reality in the countries on the ground, because of the fact that there still are some reforms to be done, and secondly, because of the perception which exists about those countries within some of the member states of the Union. And the answer is, we have to work on both issues. Firstly, we have to help the countries to reform. They have to do that as well. We have to be ready, and we have the tools, that's clear. Secondly, we have to talk more about the good things that the European Union is doing in those countries, because it all links one with another. The more people understand that we do, the more pro-European they become, and the more support the pro-European politicians will have, and that will be good news for the European Union. We do a lot, but we also have to talk about the good things that we are doing in those countries. Moldova, the country that I know best in the Eastern neighborhood, it has increased its trade with the European Union, with Romania, which is my home country, and the neighboring country of Moldova, a lot in the past years since the association agreement exists. So it's a very, very good thing. And we have to present these concrete achievements and also our concrete implications there to the people of those countries. The countries have to reform. That's obviously easier said than done, but the pandemic now has convinced us again that, you know, if you are unreformed, and we see it in some of our countries, you know, if the education system is not digitalized enough, if the health system is not modern enough, not enough capacity is not digitalized enough, this becomes more obvious when you are hit by a crisis. So it's clear that, you know, the reform agenda has to continue in a decisive way. Then we have to improve the perception about the Eastern Partnership countries also within the member states of the Union, because let's be honest, decision makers at European level are not ready to embrace the Eastern Partnership countries, also because of the perception that exists in those countries. We all remember the referendum in the Netherlands with regards to Ukraine. And in order to make these countries more popular, we have to talk to the people on the ground in, you know, particularly Western European countries, so that, you know, what the decision makers, what the politicians here in their constituencies is more positive about these countries. We have to make clear at European level that helping Eastern Partnership countries means helping ourselves. And we can only be safe, and Viola said it so well, you know, I mean, the biggest gain that we can have, you know, in relation with Putin is, you know, to have safe, stable, functional democracies in the Eastern Partnership countries. And I say we can only be safe and stable within the borders of the 27 if we are surrounded by safe and stable neighbors. So we have to make clear within the 27 to the wider population that it's in our own interest. It's in the interest of the 27 member states to help the Eastern Partnership countries as well. Obviously, the more progress each of them makes, you know, the better for them, but cooperation within the countries. And I agree with everything that was said also by Katarina in the sense that there are more, the Western Balkans are more homogeneous. Yes, that's true. But, you know, we have to see as well where there are opportunities within the Eastern Partnership countries. There is less homogeneity there, but clearly we have to encourage young people to travel from one country to another. SMEs, the private sector, the economy, the more they will do cross-border, you know, the better. And also close ties with the Central and Eastern European countries, which recently joined the European Union. Yes, closer cooperation between Eastern Partnership countries and Western Balkans might be desirable as well, but the reform expertise is much stronger in the Baltic countries, in Poland, in Romania and Bulgaria as well in many areas. And the Eastern Partnership countries need to do what the Central and Eastern European current EU member states have done recently as well. So the more we can, you know, generate engagement from these EU member states in the Eastern Partnership also in a bilateral way, the better. I was encouraged by the fact that, you know, last week the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, our former colleagues from the European Parliament, Gabrielius Landsbergis, was in the Republic of Moldova, and amongst other things announced a donation of vaccines for the people of the Republic of Moldova. The people of the Republic of Moldova will not forget this, you know, because they will remember exactly who helped them during a pandemic. So such small gestures like that donation of vaccines bilaterally done by Lithuania to the Republic of Moldova. My home country, Romania, also donated vaccines. That will not be forgotten too quickly. That's it from my side. I think there is reason for optimism, and I think if we act on all of these panels, much can be done. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Sigrid. And the last member for European Parliament who will speak, Mrs. Rasa Juknevičienė from EPP.
Thank you. I will be as short as possible. Know that everybody a lack of time. Very important research and presentations. My just few geopolitical thoughts. These presentations are important for both, by the way, EU and NATO, because two of trio countries are applicants for NATO membership as well. And now we have to find main answer. Why trio countries are still far from the possible invitees status to start negotiations. And I will put on the table two aspects. The first one, lack of understanding in EU that EU needs countries into the East. And because of that, we also have such situation. And my Spanish colleague answered it very clear that really we need those countries because there are, because they will get some alternatives, and they are not EU interest to go for those countries there. And my evaluation, and second one is Kremlin factor. I will be very frank and open. Of course, third countries are able to influence the situation on enlargement. And my last point is that we have to overcome those two questions, how to say, issues. First of all, stop, be afraid of Kremlin. And that is, I think, this feeling is not the best way to help those countries, because Putin is opportunist. He is doing as much as we allow to do him. And if we are not able to do steps forward, he will do his steps forward. Look what happened in 2008 when in Bucharest, in NATO summit, some countries blocked possible membership action plan for Georgia and Ukraine to NATO. Georgia got a war. Russia made a war against Georgia. So it means it's very clear example of opportunism and of situation when we have lack of security in one or another region. Putin is using such situations. So don't be afraid, Putin.
Rasa, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So that is how we are coming to the final stage of our discussion. Jonas, who is hosting us, he gave us 3 minutes, additional ones. And that is the whole time which we have with Michael and Stephen Bloxman from CEPS, to conclude our discussion of today, which means that we have very limited time. And that perhaps is also why we shall continue in other, seminars and other discussions, this very important topic. So I don't know who will start. Stephen, maybe you will make some remarks.
Stephen,
please.
How about? I've got something to say, but why don't you shoot?
I'll be happy to. I'll be happy to thank you all for the opportunity. First, Andreas, and CEPS, to provide this study, which has been, difficult in the making, trying to compare, apples and pears in many cases. We've done as best as we could. Of course, we're open to constructive criticism still to improve the methodology here. Second, comparing the two groups of countries is indeed perhaps a cheeky way of instilling a bit of competition in it, and especially to spur more reforms in the Western Balkans. The overall conclusion, however, and starting point, in fact, for the report is that both policy areas are a bit in the doldrums and could benefit from new momentum. And this is what we hope to achieve, of course, with this report. the observations that have been made that fundamentals ought to be addressed first, and rule of law in particular, risk, however, creating a sort of catch-22 situation in which some of the Western Balkans find themselves at the moment. Their reforms, especially in Albania, have been very radical in this respect, but have been perhaps not as best designed as they should, and lead to new delays, basically, also in disbursement of funding. So when tackling these fundamentals, both the member states, which are not addressed in this particular setting and which should definitely be approached in subsequent stages of dissemination of this report, together with the EU institutions and, of course, the neighboring countries, they ought to, I think, revisit the design and implementation of these fundamentals as one of the key building blocks so as to reform both the enlargement process and the Eastern Partnership. That would be a good place to start. So with that, from my side, perhaps Michael, a few final words.
Michael, please go on.
Thank you. Well, final points. One, since we finished the drafting of the paper, it's been in circulation for a few days, we've had responses from people in the Balkans, think tankers in the Balkans. And I've become aware, which I hadn't been when we were finishing the paper, that there are a number of papers in circulation from Balkan think tanks that are very much along the same lines of progressive integration. And so that is something to be followed up. This leads my second point. I mean, this whole business is Balkans and East Europeans together, but this particular session, of course, is very much an East European session. We, for our part, will be thinking about how to get the Balkans into this debate, which we can certainly do ourselves with respect to the think tanks. This leads to the specific point as to merger or not. The term was used, not by us, but the hypothesis was there. I would say from all that we've been discussing today, we're not discussing a merger, but we are discussing certainly the possibility for a common and unified system of monitoring between the two groups, which our paper, I think, illustrates, which is absolutely relevant to the interesting point about interregional competition that has been raised. And then a final point is the question of linkage to the conference on the future of Europe we're about to begin, with one chat contributor having suggested, raised the question. Well, there I would say, yes, there should be some organizational arrangement whereby all neighboring states in Balkans and Eastern Europe that aspire to membership, they have a legitimate claim to a voice in the process. For other states of the Eastern Partnership, for example, that do not aspire to membership, they've put themselves in this context into a different category. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Stephen. And well, my concluding just few sentences, thanks a lot to all the participants, and especially to CEPS, for producing this report, and also for really opening the doors for, I think, some kind of, intellectual and geopolitical thinking about how to proceed further, looking not only into, what is happening now or what will happen during, this year, but what can happen during the whole decade. And having in mind how geopolitically things are changing with Belarus, with Russia even, how big influence can be made by success of Eastern Partnership countries, for the whole development. That is what we, what we need to have in mind. And I think that especially for Eastern Partnership, for trio countries, this much more clear picture of what is possible to achieve should become really this, what I call always very, 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 very attractive carrot. Not a theoretical discussion about, membership perspective, which never was leading to any kind of, clear conclusion. and sometimes making frustration, which for me, it was looking like really very dangerous development, that you can start to lose, motivation for reforms if really you do not see clear paths how to move forward. So that is what I see really is opening some kind of new possibilities. And that is what really is creating this new momentum. So I think that we shall discuss really in different fora, those major ideas. And again, we shall meet again and again. And thanks again to everybody, and especially to Jonas, who is hosting our conversation, and who is becoming nervous because he will need to start a new one, very soon conversation. So thanks a lot to everybody. Thanks, and see you later. Thanks. Bye. Jonas skubė išjungė.